is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. It's no secret our world is going through some serious changes. Climate change has been throwing all sorts of things out of whack, from longer wildfire seasons to warmer winters. And those are things we're used to hearing about all the time now. But there's a lesser known climate emergency that's gone largely unrecognized, and it has to do with what's happening underneath the surface of oceans. Tonight we're talking about something called hypoxic zones in our oceans. Humans can be diagnosed with hypoxemia, which is basically low oxygen in your blood. If untreated, the effects can be pretty dangerous. Something similar is happening in the ocean, turning these once lively spots into dead zones. We turn to Newsy's Scott Withers to break down how it happens.
A beautiful day at the beach, soaking in the sun, swimming with your family, dead fish floating nearby. You wouldn't know it from the surface, but areas of the Earth's oceans choking to death. It's called hypoxia, or dead zones. They occur naturally, but humans and climate change making them significantly worse. The dead zones mostly appear along the coast of the world's oceans. One of the biggest is in the Gulf of Mexico, at the mouth of the Mississippi River. This year's zone is bigger than normal, stretching 6,300 square miles. When any river dumps into an ocean or gulf, it's not just water. It's lots of dissolved nutrients, runoff from farmlands upstream, or human sewage dumped into the river. The nutrients feeding algae, creating massive blooms, eventually dying and sinking to the bottom. The decaying process uses almost all of the oxygen in the water, as the marine life there suffocates on just a fourth of the oxygen normally found in the water. Climate change making it worse. Rising water temperatures, increasing runoff from storms, and more powerful coastal upwelling, all lowering oxygen levels even further. The water turning toxic, new algae blooms growing, releasing poison, killing larger fish and marine life, and creating breathing issues for land animals, including humans, responsible for the nutrients. I'm Newsy meteorologist Scott Withers.
As Scott mentioned there, one of the notable areas is in the Gulf of Mexico. But that's just one spot. Newsy's Sam Eaton takes us to Oregon's Pacific coast and shows us how dead zones there, in this case caused by changes in ocean currents and wind patterns, are impacting life below and above the surface of the ocean, and how they're only the beginning of a dangerous domino effect.
The Oregon coast is known for its stunning beauty, but under the surface, these cold ocean currents support one of the most productive ecosystems on the planet. And because of that, one of the largest fishing fleets on the West Coast.
Our family fishing boat, the Timmy Boy, has just come in from a trip fishing for sablefish, and we found some.
Fisherman Bob Etter says this abundance is fueled by the seasonal upwelling of cold, nutrient-rich waters along the coast.
It's kind of like turning over your garden, this upwelling, and it helps produce this wide range of wild protein.
But Etter says they're seeing alarming changes in the ocean. That beneficial upwelling he speaks of, now supercharged by a warming planet, is spinning off massive coastal dead zones every summer that suffocate anything too slow to escape.
I'm here in Newport meeting a fishing boat that's back from about 4 days at sea. It's unloading its catch here of 50,000 pounds of fish. Generating a lot of economic activity here in Newport. This is one of the most sustainable fisheries on the planet, which really shows you what's at stake as climate change begins to take a toll on our oceans.
Down the dock, fishermen, considered by many to be frontline scientists, talk of unprecedented changes they're seeing, with these seasonal dead zones called hypoxia topping the list. Justin Lupardes fishes Dungeness crab.
We've seen pots come up in dead zones with every single crab was dead in them, 20, 30 crab. Been dead for a while, so I've seen it up close and personal.
Submersible cameras off the coast back as far as 2006 filmed reefs littered with thousands of suffocated crabs. Marine ecologist Francis Chan says these low-oxygen events now arrive with such frequency that they have their own named season, the hypoxia season.
It's just like the fire season on land. It happens starting every spring. It intensifies, and it's actually moving marine life around.
But unlike the wildfires, the oceans have gone largely unnoticed. Here's how it works. Across the North Pacific, the ocean acts as a carbon sink, absorbing huge amounts of excess CO2 from the atmosphere. That water sinks and is carried by deep currents on a meandering, decades-long journey across the globe. Once it finally reaches the Oregon coast, winds from the north push this oxygen-deprived water back to the surface.
These winds are the engine to drive ocean currents that bring in nutrient-rich waters. Really amazing. But when you supercharge that system, we get episodes where oxygen actually drops to levels that are too low and marine life just suffocate.
This year, critically low oxygen levels came earlier and lasted longer than any previous measurements Chan has observed since 2002 when monitoring began. Today, he's heading out to sea with a team of scientists to see if the dead zone is still out there.
So we're here off the Oregon coast, and we've been bringing up these devices that are measuring things like the oxygen content of the water in an effort to understand how climate change is shifting the balance of these oceans.
There's a lot of different 6287 configuration files.
We were here a month ago, and it was really low, lowest that we've seen this year so far, 0.4 mil per liter. Right now, today, it's at 0.2 mil per liter, so it's a little bit less than what we saw last time. That's a long time for something to hold its breath.
But it's another thing entirely for that marine life to endure the chemical domino effect set off by these high CO2 concentrations along the coast.
So as humans continue to pump CO2 into the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels, as much as a third of it ends up right here in these oceans, where it's altering the chemistry of the water. Our oceans are more acidic now than they have been in 55 million years.
We're moving the dial on ocean chemistry like that. This is really fast. And the worry for us, for scientists, is that, well, how fast can biology adapt?
The thing is, these changes to the ocean are for the most part baked in, even if humans stopped burning fossil fuels today.
The problem that we have in this environment is that this water is already 50 years old.
Chemical oceanographer Burke Hales says that means today's impacts, which are already tipping the balance, are fueled by greenhouse gas emissions from all the way back in the 1970s and 80s. Since then, annual emissions have nearly doubled.
We haven't seen today's water up well on this coast yet, and it's going to be as much worse as the atmosphere is today compared to 50 years ago. And so it's like we've sent ourselves a package on a train that we can't stop. And it's not a package that we're going to like very much.
Up the coast, oyster hatcheries are bearing the brunt of these corrosive, climate-altered waters. Alan Barton manages production at the Whiskey Creek Shellfish Hatchery in Netarts Bay.
There was a single weekend in 2008 where we came in and basically lost everything. The entire hatch was dead on the bottom of the tank.
With Oregon State University, they developed a device to measure water chemistry in real time, buffering the tanks with oxygen and soda ash. He says they're basically on life support.
If we weren't doing that, we would have gone out of business back in 2009. You know, just by the skin of our teeth is really the only reason Whiskey Creek is still here. Stubbornness is a good thing in the oyster industry, so.
We all set?
Clear.
We've had to be adaptable. We've had to adapt to market changes, and we've had to do a lot of adaptation to management, to policy. Adapting to climate change is probably going to be the biggest challenge of all.
It's a challenge the hypoxia season will only make more difficult to adapt to, both for these coastal ecosystems and for the people who depend on them for their livelihoods. Sam Eaton, Newsy, Newport, Oregon.
Here to talk with us a bit more about that story is friend of ITL Newsy's Sam Eaton. Sam, I'm always talking to you for work-related things. We'll make sure to catch up on some personal time a little later, but you know, I want to thank you for being here with us. First and foremost, hypoxic seasons. Can you break that down?
Yeah, this is a new one, Christian. as if we don't have enough climate catastrophes already to worry about. The crazy thing about this one is it's been going on for quite a while now. The impacts are already being felt along the Oregon coast. The oyster hatchery I featured in the piece was at one point losing $70,000 a month because of the cost of their hatchery completely dying because of the water coming in. This isn't going away. Every decade, we're going to see more and more of these changes in the pipeline. These guys are on the front lines of dealing with this, and they're even questioning whether growing oysters along the Oregon coast is going to be viable down the road.
So people watching this piece will likely have the same question, and I'll ask you, can hypoxic zones be fixed? So
this is the tricky part, Christian. When I was talking to Burke Hales, the chemical oceanographer, he was talking about how the emissions, the global fossil fuels emissions that are causing these hypoxic zones along the Oregon coast, that's from the 1970s and the 1980s level of emissions that have imprinted on these oceans. We haven't even seen today's emissions, and since then, global emissions have nearly doubled. Cutting emissions is probably the most important thing that we can do to resolve this problem, basically so that the water that's going to arrive on this coast decades from now doesn't create these essentially ocean deserts where all of the things that we pull from the ocean and eat and the ecosystems don't collapse because of it.
So, Sam, we know cutting greenhouse gas emissions is critical, but is there anything else that can be done right now to help?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. I spoke with some fisheries managers, and they're rethinking, the entire way that they're managing these fisheries, creating a more climate adaptive approach because things are changing so quickly. But one of the things that they were telling me is how we need to preserve these habitats, things like eelgrass and the kelp beds that have been struggling along the Pacific coast. Both of these remove carbon from the water through photosynthesis, which is has a huge impact potentially on reversing some of these worst effects on changing ocean chemistry. This is critical to counter some of the impacts of climate change on our oceans. But basically, it's rethinking how us humans interact with the oceans, having a lighter touch, essentially. Something that, what we don't want to do is add stress to any of these ecosystems. We want them to be as resilient as they can as these changes are coming down the pipeline.
Newsy's Sam Eaton giving us some really good information to use to understand climate change and the effects of climate change. Sam, much appreciated, man. We'll do this again sometime.
Thanks, Christian.
All right, gang, we're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we'll take you through what's trending on the interwebs. We'll see you in a bit. A wise person once said that the news is just the first draft of history, which must mean the trending topics you see on social media are like a rough draft deliriously scribbled on a bar napkin or something. Anyway, let's try to make sense of what's trending today. Twitch might need a security tweak. The live streaming service suffered a serious hack this week. According to Video Game Chronicle, an anonymous hacker dropped a full link to all the stolen information in 4chan. The hacker said the link was meant to create more disruption and competition since Twitch is a, quote, disgusting, toxic cesspool. I don't know what y'all been doing on there, but y'all better get it together. A lot of stuff was leaked, including Twitch's internal security tools, source code, and 3 years worth of creator payout data. If you are a Twitch user, changing your password and switching on that two-factor authentication is probably a safe bet right now. Also, there could be a sequel. The anonymous hacker said that leak was only part 1.
Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. They're more than good.
They're good. Sorry, Tony, but some Kellogg's employees might say there's a little room for improvement. On Tuesday, more than 1,400 workers went on strike at Kellogg's cereal plants in Nebraska, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. The union and company have been in an impasse for more than a year. They've disagreed on things like premium healthcare, holiday and vacation pay, and reduced retirement benefits. The last time the union went on strike was in 1972. This comes after the plants continued to operate during the pandemic, something the union said was exhausting for the employees. Kellogg said it's working on contingency plans to limit supply disruptions, which means non-union workers will likely be brought into the plants in the meantime. Earlier this week, folks started taking note of mysterious billboards that read 30 going up around the world. And then Adele changed her profile pic to match the billboard's color scheme and posted a teaser of new music, pretty much confirming what fans were hoping for and reactivating our tear ducts. If you're a real fan, you know she's named her albums after different ages, starting with 19 and then most recently ending at 25. And now, rumor has it, 30 will be the next album and it'll be released in the upcoming weeks. This project was first teased last year, but delays. Thanks, pandemic. Adele's Easy on Me will come out October 15th. We're getting more info every day about COVID booster shots. Some of you may be able to get them right now, but a lot of you may still be waiting. And there's been a lot of conflicting info about who can even get one now. Newsy is partnering with the Washington Post's video team to bring you more in-depth reporting and analysis, including this breakdown of what you need to know about vaccine boosters.
There's a lot of confusion around these latest plans for booster shots because they don't precisely line up with what the Biden administration had announced earlier this summer.
So what you're seeing here is science playing out in a very transparent way. This is the way it ought to be. The process is to look at the data, have the experts consider it, and then make their best judgment at that point, recognizing that the judgments may change.
What the administration had wanted to see, and had some backing from the health officials working with them and their expert advisors, was that all Americans could get booster shots after 8 months or so. What's occurred in the past few weeks is a more targeted situation for people to get booster shots. So instead of everyone getting booster shots, it's a subset of the population, particularly for adults who are over 65.
Now, I know it doesn't look like it, but I am over 65. I wish I way over. And that's why I'm getting my booster shot today.
If you've received a Pfizer shot and you're 65 years or older, you can get an extra dose, a booster, at 6 months after full vaccination. There's also people who can receive shots based on their occupation. So if you're a frontline worker, an essential worker, and you come in contact with lots of people, and you may be at higher risk of exposure to the virus, you're also eligible. And then for folks who have health conditions, underlying risks that make them more susceptible to severe disease, they're also eligible as well. If you're eligible for a vaccine, you should be able to get it in a very similar way to when you got your first doses, whether that's through a clinic or your doctor or CVS. You don't need any kind of prescription. Mixing different brands of vaccines pretty consistently throughout the pandemic has been not something that's been endorsed by the CDC, simply because the safety and efficacy data aren't there for it. These drugs have been studied rigorously in trials and other observational studies using the same vaccine in sequence. So people who go out and get one shot of one thing and one shot of another on their own, that's still not something that regulators would advise. Johnson & Johnson and Moderna have been submitting data for their vaccines to get approved on a rolling basis. Pfizer was the first to do so, so that's why we saw Pfizer get full approval before the other two vaccines. Similarly with boosters, the Food and Drug Administration has to review data as the companies submit it.
Let's see, is that high enough for you?
President Biden got his booster shot on camera, and I think he was showing that the shots are safe. He also continued his message of reaching out to the unvaccinated and saying, look, these group of Americans, if you're on the fence, talk to a trusted medical source, that you can do a part in helping control this pandemic.
A big thanks to our friends at the Washington Post for that piece. Coming up after the break, we have another report from Newsy's Two Americas series with more on the rise of Black entrepreneurs. Stay tuned. For a bit of good news, Black entrepreneurship has actually gone way up since the start of the pandemic. But while 2020 saw a sudden spike in Black business owners, there's still a lot of inequity when it comes to financial support for those businesses. With this report from our Two Americas series, Matt Pearl tells more about what caused this rise and if this could be a long-lasting step toward more equity in the future.
On this street, in this room, there is power.
I'm adding labels.
There is power in packaging. There is power in posting.
Updating my Instagram.
There is power in the clutter in the office of Michelle Youngblood.
Is it always supposed to be this cluttered?
No, not at all.
There is power because Michelle owns it all.
Affirmations kind of remind me, like, take a deep breath. It's okay to breathe.
Michelle runs a boutique clothing line called Brooklyn and Blake. It's named after her kids.
They are twins and they are 1 minute apart.
She started it last year, among the largest percentage of new black entrepreneurs in decades.
What is the power for you in starting a business?
Being able to dream bigger.
Black Americans make up 13% of the population, but barely 2% of U.S. business owners. Last year, for the first time, the percentage of new black business owners hit 13%. Finally, on pace. That is all about power and being empowered. There is power here. This street in downtown Atlanta separates two historically black colleges, Spelman and Morehouse, two schools that have just received a huge burst of entrepreneurial energy.
We are just over a year of our initial investment.
Ebony Thomas is an executive at Bank of America. They just put $10 million toward a Center for Black Entrepreneurship at Spelman and Morehouse. They've committed $1 billion over 4 years for causes of equity.
This is a segment of the population that has been blocked out of businesses for centuries.
In 2020, the narrative was upended. The death of George Floyd set off nationwide protests and amplified the need for racial equity. Big businesses pledged money. Buy Black became an intention.
New black businesses have always received less support, less funding, less than 1% of all of this, this capital that's been out there for years.
But 2020 brought another reckoning, a pandemic that impacted us all and put millions out of work, including Michelle.
I was working for a healthcare company, a meeting with the director and the head of HR. And I think everybody knows what that means when you have a meeting with HR. I almost cried. I think I did cry a little bit. And then I'm just like, you know what? Okay, God, I trust you. Vacuum cleaners are in here.
Michelle had sketched clothing designs for years. The pandemic gave light to a new line.
I feel like it takes you out of a box. It takes the limits off.
When I think about equity and when I think about, entrepreneurship, a lot of that is being able to, particularly within the Black community, be so aspirational and be the drivers of our future.
There is power here.
It's my first one here.
Michelle and Brooklyn and Blake walking into the boutique's new showroom.
So put a piece of tape.
Just 9 months since starting the business.
I saw myself here. To be able to be here is a totally different thing.
It's a room filled mostly with possibility. It's one of many new seeds toward a path of power.
Do you feel like you took control of your own personal story?
Yep, absolutely. I absolutely do. It's either you wallow in it or you get out of it.
In Atlanta, I'm Matt Pearl.
During the pandemic, there's been a recorded uptick of anti-Asian hate. In response, a number of Asian American grocery stores have become a safe space of sorts. Newsy's Kat Sandoval takes us to a grocery store in the suburbs of Chicago to give us a look at why shopping at these places means more than just filling up the fridge.
Hey Christian, for Asian Americans like me, Asian grocery stores are where we can get Asian items that remind us of home. And since anti-Asian hate is on the rise, it's also a place that's a community hub.
About an hour-and-a-half drive from Chicago in Aurora, Illinois, hundreds gathered in this Asian grocery store to watch and celebrate the Moon Festival or the Autumn Harvest. In some Asian cultures, it's a time when families get together, like Thanksgiving. This woman brought her nephew.
Now that he's at the age where he can have memories, this would be great because I remember when my sister and I, my parents brought us, to Chinatown.
And there was a massive crowd.
I want to learn more of it, maybe the language also. I'm Mexican, so it's a little bit different, but it's great to learn.
The Asian grocery store, not only for providing the food for the Asian or Chinese community, also for everyone.
Eddie Nee from the Windfall Properties bought this strip mall 3 years ago when stores were closing and leaving. Since then, they've grown despite the pandemic. With the Chinese grocery store at its center, other Asian businesses followed suit. Now it's attracted 33 new businesses, and the new mall got a new name, Pacifica Square.
In your average grocery store, Asian products are usually limited to one shelf or a specialty food aisle called ethnic foods. But here, Asian products are everywhere.
Here is the Chinese slogan.
Okay.
It's from south of China, and it tastes very sweet and juicy. There are some live seafood fish, like tilapia, sea bass. This is live abalone.
In her book, Crying in H Mart, Michelle Zahner sought comfort in the Korean supermarket aisles while mourning the death of her Korean mother. She wrote, "We're all searching for a piece of home or a piece of ourselves." Ethnic supermarkets are a $40 billion industry, and in Aurora, there is definitely a need, serving APIs, the fastest growing ethnic group in the U.S.
There's a large Asian demographics, and there's nothing really catering towards this community. So having the grocery store attract all the other businesses, a lot more businesses are wanting to open and to show off their culture.
For APIs in the area, it's about finding comfort and safety in each other, and of course, the food.
The last 18 months have been kind of, crazy with the Asian hate and the anti-discrimination stuff. So being able to kind of come to communities and be able to kind of be with other peers has been more comforting.
An Asian grocery store can be much more than just a place to shop. Kat Sandoval, Newsy, Aurora, Illinois.
After the break, we've got a deep dive for you on what's been happening with immigration, and we've got some reporting from the border itself with a former Border Patrol agent who's now facing deportation. That's all up next. There's been a lot of news and controversy coming from the US-Mexico border lately, but coming along with that are a lot of misconceptions that are worth clearing up. For one, there's this idea that the majority of people coming across the border in search for a better life are Mexicans or Central Americans. But as we've seen in the news lately, that's not always the case. We've seen a lot of Haitians at the border, and sometimes they're not coming directly from Haiti. They also come from Central and South America. To provide more context, we sat down with Carla McCanders, an immigration law expert and professor at Vanderbilt University.
Migrants will, travel to a country in South America where for a long time they did not have visa requirements. You could, get on a plane and you can go to certain countries in South America without having to apply for a visa. And that caused a lot of Haitian migrants to remain in South America, Brazil and Chile and Argentina. When those countries were hit by the pandemic, there were no more jobs. In Chile, Haitian migrants started to experience a little bit of racism. And so then they took a 3-month journey from South America all the way up to the southern border.
Some left Haiti because of natural disasters. They've experienced 2 devastating earthquakes over the past 11 years that left cities destroyed and killed hundreds of thousands of people. The country is experiencing a humanitarian crisis. On top of that, Haitian President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated in July, which worsened political instability. Migrants from Latin America and the Caribbean have been outpacing those from Mexico or the Northern Triangle. Those are countries that are common starting points for people who migrate to the US, places like Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. More people are now coming from Ecuador, Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. When we look at these numbers, we also have to look at what is causing this.
The last time I was at the border was in 2019. And one thing that took me by surprise was that there was a diverse group of migrants at the border, that there were, The majority of individuals in 2019 were Central Americans, but there was still a large group of Haitian migrants back in 2019, migrants from even the west coast of Africa, from Cameroon. So I think there are, diverse populations that are at the border, and Venezuelans, there's been instability in their country too, that causes them to migrate to the southern border and seek protection.
Now we turn to Newsy's Ben Chamiso, who's at the US-Mexico border. He's bringing us another story about someone's journey into the US. Ben, what can you tell us?
Hi, Christian. Right behind me is the US-Mexico border crossing where one agent spent nearly 20 years proudly enforcing the law and deporting undocumented migrants. Now he's fighting against his own removal after finding out his whole life was built on a lie.
This 17-acre ranch in South Texas is Raul Rodriguez's piece of paradise. His life accomplishment and his retirement dream.
Come on.
But it could all be taken away from him in a blink of an eye.
I dedicated my life to buying more land and buying this. If I get deported, my wife will be forced to sell.
For nearly 20 years, Rodriguez was a border agent helping deport people.
Let's still pitch.
Now he fears he'll be the one being deported.
Now gone into hiding when I was enforcing these laws.
Like those he used to deport, he fears getting picked up anytime he leaves his property near the US-Mexico border.
As soon as I leave my house, there's officers everywhere.
Still, he sometimes meets up with former colleagues at a restaurant nearby.
Hey, what's going on? Morning. Morning.
I've worked with you for I don't know how many years, at least 10 or 15 years. You've always been a good officer and did your job better and better than most guys.
My keys.
Half a century living in the US, never doubting he was a citizen, even serving in the US Navy for 5 years before his immigration career. It all came crashing down in 2018 when investigators confronted him with this Mexican birth certificate.
I just felt my blood go down to my feet.
Rodriguez, it turned out, was born in Mexico. He says he never knew. His family had arranged for a midwife to register a false US birth certificate.
Siempre se lo oculté. Y ahora que está grande, pues me da vergüenza. Pues que me perdone, ¿verdad?
Rodriguez was fired right away. He's been jobless and undocumented ever since. His citizenship application denied and his deportation case postponed until at least 2022.
What would happen to you if you got deported?
If word gets out who I work for, I'm pretty sure I'm gone.
The border agency declined to comment on Rodriguez's case. But Rodriguez's attorney argues his client is innocent because he was oblivious to his parents' lie.
You could not make a false claim unless you knew that it was false. And that's why we're wasting our money. I mean, we're going after him as if he was the worst criminal.
As an immigration agent, Rodriguez oversaw the deportation of thousands of people. Now he's using his insider knowledge to help fellow men and women without legal status who also served in the armed forces.
Veterans, if they've served in the U.S. military, they deserve to be in the U.S. no matter what.
Rodriguez says his wife's mental and financial support has helped him carry on.
This is my husband. I'm not going to abandon him, certainly not, like everybody else has in his life. Yeah.
Raul and Anita met in immigration training.
My first load as an immigration inspector.
Anita still works for Homeland Security, the very same department that is trying to deport her husband.
As soon as I retire, my voice will be heard.
Through his trauma, Rodriguez says he has become a better, more compassionate man.
Yeah, that's the baby. You still have a girlfriend? I was a very angry man while I was working for CBP. I was becoming somebody that I didn't like.
He has recently started talking again to his dad on the phone.
I just want to be at peace.
And soon he hopes to be able to forgive him too. Ben Chamiso, Newsy, San Benito, Texas.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When you're back, we'll give you a sneak peek at the newest episode of Newsy's documentary series, In Real Life.
It's time to see the bigger picture, widen the lens, narrow the divide.
We must love and support one another!
That support is shifting, and it's shifting toward concern for climate.
It's about the whole community stepping up to help.
Not everything is left or right, good or bad.
The human capacity for change is so inspiring.
It's time to look closer at the whole story.
A hurricane don't care what your color is or how much money you make. It affects us all.
It's time to ask, why?
The whole goal is to point people to something bigger.
Introducing a new point of view. Yours. Newsy. Learn more at newsy.com.
Newsy's documentary series In Real Life brings us new, in-depth storytelling every week. The next episode premieres this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it's the kind of story that really shows the best of what social media can be, something that makes people feel connected. TikTok creator houses and social influencers can sometimes come across like they're all about the glam, all about superficial beauty. But for In Real Life, Newsy's Cody LeGros takes us inside a different kind of creator house to meet a very different kind of influencer. As you'll see in this clip from the show, Grandpa G's social media empire all starts with ideas.
Life is just warming up for Norman Brazelton.
Hey! Let's party, y'all!
He's joined the kids on TikTok, known as Grandpa G. He's a former barber who went from cutting hair on Chicago's South Side to cutting a rug on the internet. Garnering him 741,000 followers, he calls grandkids.
Don't give up. I need you to go. Go! 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 I have laughed so much in one day that I had cramps in my cheeks.
And I told you, I have a different set of cheek cramps. What do you think your purpose in life is?
I don't know. I'm 84 now, you know.
When do you find out?
Yeah. It's kind of closing in over there.
I was just like, okay, well, let me know.
I was just kind of like in the dumps. And all of a sudden, my granddaughters introduced me to TikTok. Okay. Listen. Love for you in Russia. Ain't a two.
5, 6, 7, 8. Right, left, right, left, then step.
You get to be like my age, you think that, you know, that's it. All the good days, they're behind you now. The TikTok give you that promise that you still got a chance. You still can do something in life. You can still make somebody happy.
Here to talk with us about that clip and that episode of In Real Life is Newsy's Cody LeGros. Always a pleasure having you on the show, man.
Christian, an honor to be back. Thanks for having me.
An honor. Wow, that's amazing. Curious to know, what were you most interested in learning about TikTok Grandpa here?
Well, that's the thing. If you've ever done any sort of activity with your grandparents, you know, install a little bit more time than you normally need to get that done. So the working dynamic between Gen Z and their grandpa, that's what I was most interested in. So for Grandpa G and family, going viral happened by chance, but maintaining their audience is a strategy, and it's led by the granddaughters who are navigating this era of content creation. So it was very entertaining to witness their process. And of course, being alive today, Christian can kind of feel like a barrage of technology and connection and having a digital presence. And this family is embracing all of them in a way that is so special it made their grandpa famous, okay? So it's a story that's incredibly human. You'll laugh, you might cry, and you can watch it on In Real Life this weekend.
It's wonderful. You know, the saying, it takes a village. I guess it also takes a village to make your grandpa go viral. What's cool about this is, you know, if journalism doesn't work out for me in my later years, I think we're getting a pretty good view of what's next in my future.
Exactly. You just got to set up the family tree, you know, to have the staff to put you on the track to social media superstardom. But I'm sure you can do it, Christian.
I appreciate that. You know, I'm looking forward to, you know, using my kids and my grandkids in that way. Cody, thank you so much for giving us some insight into TikTok Grandpa. Of course, as he said, you could see more in that episode of In Real Life, Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. I appreciate you joining us, man.
Thank you so much, Christian.
Always a good time when Knob Noster's finest comes on the show. And folks, the episode is just as good as advertised. Anyway, we're powering down, but not before taking you back through the top stories of the day. And now it's time to wrap things up with a little segment we call Closing the Loop. For our first story, I'm just going to hand it off to national correspondent Sam Eaton and let him break down what's happening under the surface of the ocean on Oregon's Pacific coast.
Down the dock, fishermen, considered by many to be frontline scientists, talk of unprecedented changes they're seeing, with these seasonal dead zones called hypoxia topping the list.
You know, we've seen pots come up in dead zones with every single crab was dead in them. 20, 30 crab. Been dead for a while.
It's just like the fire season on land. It happens starting every spring. It intensifies, and it's actually moving marine life around.
So as humans continue to pump CO2 into the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels, as much as a third of it ends up right here in these oceans, where it's altering the chemistry of the water. Our oceans are more acidic now than they have been in 55 million years.
The thing is, these changes to the ocean are for the most part baked in, even if humans stopped burning fossil fuels today.
The problem that we have in this environment is that this water is already 50 years old.
We've had to be adaptable. We've had to adapt to market changes, and we've had to do a lot of adaptation to management, to policy. Adapting to climate change is probably going to be the biggest challenge of all.
At the U.S.-Mexico border, we've seen many Haitian migrants seeking asylum. A lot of them came through Mexico from Central and South America.
Migrants will, travel to a country in South America where for a long time they did not have visa requirements. You could, get on a plane and you can go to certain countries in South America without having to apply for a visa. And that caused a lot of Haitian migrants to remain in South America.
When the pandemic hit and there were no more jobs for Haitians in these South American countries, they decided to make the journey to the U.S. Some people left Haiti because of the two major earthquakes they've had, one in 2010 and one this year, that sparked a humanitarian crisis. There's also a lot of political instability. While we usually see many migrants come from Mexico and the Northern Triangle, which includes Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, we're now seeing more people come from other places like Ecuador, Brazil, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant, and we'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow. Evening Debrief is next.